Hi, so T. Michelle Birdsong, Eve, daughter of the sun, Eve, mother of all living. My people are destroyed for lack of knowledge, because thou hast rejected knowledge. I will also reject thee. Lack of knowledge of God. Hosea 4:1, King James Version. That is, lack of piety, the quality of being religious or reverent. The Western Journal commentary on the Candace Owens takes apart Kaepernick. Slavery happens in Africa, not America, by Randy DeSoto, March 2nd, 2020. Okay, and I have commentary on his commentary. Candace Owens took former San Francisco 49ers quarterback Colin Kaepernick and his fellow left-wing ideologues to school on the history of slavery, pointing out it did not originate in America and still exists in Africa to this very day, said DeSoto. During her address to CPAC outside of Washington, D.C. on Friday, Owens argued that Kaepernick is emblematic of the left's ignorance or purposeful obfuscation about the record of slavery in America and beyond. The left has no idea, says Candace Owens, that the world did not begin in 1776. The years of traveling the country and facing off with hysterical liberals, and that is my scientific conclusion, that they haven't the slightest idea that anything exists or that anything ever existed outside of the United States of America. As I previously wrote, the New York Times Far Left 1619 Project at least acknowledged that slavery was introduced into the British American colonies over 150 years before they claimed independence. Now this is DeSoto talking. However, the Times went on to falsely claim that protecting slavery was a primary reason the colonies declared their independence. Kaepernick clearly is of the 1619 Project way of thinking, excuse me, with America being a land of injustice toward black people. Note from Eve, black people, the original Hebrews, Jews of the Bible, are suffering self-punishment for having been part of the conspiracy to kill Jesus Christ, their Savior. Owens pointed back to DeSoto's article. Owens pointed to a pair of 4th of July tweets the liberal activist posted that illustrate how his hatred for the United States is based on a distorted view of the place of slavery in the nation's history. First, Kaepernick shared a quote from the abolitionist Frederick Douglass, now being Dr. Thomas Sowell, professor at Stanford University, from his speech, "What to the slave is the 4th of July? What have I, or those I represent, to do with your national independence? This 4th of July is yours, not mine. There is not a nation on the earth guilty of practices more shocking and bloody than are the people of these United States at this very hour," Kaepernick tweeted last July 4th. What he failed to mention is the year Douglass spoke those words, 1852, a decade before Abraham Lincoln, now being Tony Robbins' Emancipation Proclamation, and 13 years before the 13th Amendment ending slavery was passed. Douglass argued powerfully for the end of slavery in the years leading up to the Civil War, and then recruited black soldiers, including his own sons, to fight for the Union during the conflict. Kaepernick also failed to mention the abolitionist delivered his speech in the Free state of New York. Almost all of the states north of the Mason-Dixon line had voted to abolish slavery by the end of the Revolutionary War in 1783. By 1804, all of the northern states had passed legislation ending slavery. Note from Eve: thank you, northern states of America, for ending slavery, unlike Africa that still have slaves in 2020. Related: room explodes in cheers as former NFL player calls Trump the first black president. Back to the article. Page 4. Candace Owens has being as abolitionist Harriet Tubman. In 1838, Douglas, then approximately 20 years old, successfully escaped from slavery in Maryland, first making it to New York via Philadelphia. Eventually, he settled in Massachusetts. As many as 100,000 slaves escaped to the north, while slavery remained legal in the southern states. In a July 4, 2017 tweet, Kaepernick wrote, "How can we truly celebrate independence on a day that intentionally robbed our ancestors of theirs?" Note from Eve: your ancestors, the Jewish people, had robbed the Messiah of his right to life and his wife, Mary Magdalene, of her husband, Jesus Christ. And then Kaepernick says, "To find my independence," tweeted Kaepernick, "I went home." The tweet featured video from a trip he took to Ghana, a choice Owens found ironic. She said, in lieu of celebrating his independence in America, Colin got on a plane and went to Africa, a continent upon which he found better grounds for celebration, which is interesting, Owens says. It's interesting because currently today in Africa there are close to 700,000 slaves, she continued, noting they are being enslaved by other Africans. The conservative highlighted that in Ghana itself, CNN reported last year, 20,000 children work as slaves in the fishing industry. Owens also argued that white men should be given credit for taking the lead to end slavery beginning in the 1800s. Note from Eve: thank you, white men, for taking the lead to end slavery in the 1800s. Thank you. The first nation to abolish the practice of slavery was Great Britain, Owens said. They were then followed by the French colonies, who were then followed by the United States. Centuries of slavery and 3 countries of white men led the world in ending it. Thank you, says Eve. As an aside, slavery was abolished in Great Britain in 1833, over a half-century after the founding of the United States, further proving that the New York Times claim the colonies declared their independence to protect slavery is not grounded in reality. Eve notes, it was a lie. Slavery was not brought to this continent by white Europeans, as the left would have imagined, Owen contended, noting that indigenous people enslaved each other. Slavery existed everywhere in the world, including here, since the dawn of humanity, she said. Page 6. Candace Owens, who had been as Harriet Tubman. Owens stated that brown and black peoples have enslaved each other in numbers far greater than white men ever have enslaved them. Note from Eve: them, the killers of Christ. Owen offers the example of ancient Persia, Egyptian, the Chinese Qing, and Ming, Mongol empires, as well as the Muslim Caliphate of the Middle Ages, the Ottoman and Japanese empires of more modern times. My purpose here is to simply tell the truth. This is Candace Owens talking. The truth about the history of all men of days past, a history that is complex, ugly, brutish, immoral, and leaves no man, regardless of his skin complexion, guiltless, she said. Luke 8:17, King James Version of the Bible, for nothing is secret that shall not be made manifest, neither anything hid that shall not be known and come abroad. Owens said, but the left wants us to believe otherwise. To them, imperialism, cannibalism, murder, slavery, all of these undeniably sinful acts are forgiven in a historical context, so long as they were not committed by white men. That's not fair, notes Eve. Overall, Owens gave a much-needed historical perspective of America's original sin of slavery. What other nation in the 1700s even came close to setting the bar the U.S. did? In the Declaration of Independence, that all men are created equal with certain God-given unalienable rights. America then set out to fulfill this ideal in the decades and centuries that followed, providing a beacon of liberty the world over. The proof is in the pudding. Each year, over 1 million people who happen to be primarily brown and black immigrate to the United States, note, from their hellhole countries. And if America were the racist dystopia, Kaepernick, who's a poster boy for ingratitude, and the left would have us believe, why do so many want to be here? Note, because, warts and all, America is the greatest country in the world. The reason is clear, writes DeSoto, because regardless of your skin color, creed, or national origin, you can obtain that blessed status of being an American. And that's the end of the article. We, the Western Journal, are committed to truth and accuracy and action in all of our journalism. Note, in the same speech, Candace brought up the cannibalism practice of the American Indians. Also, cannibalism existed in Africa. The great peacekeeper, now being T. Birdsong, explained his ideas to his friend Hiawatha, now being Ostara Gloria Turner, who in turn explained the thinking to 6 Warren nations, Mohawk, Oneida, Onondaga, Cayuga, Seneca, and Tuscarora, and together the great peacekeeper and Hiawatha persuaded them, these 6 nations, to stop fighting and biting one another and live in peace in a union called the Iroquois Confederacy. Amazing. A favorite word of Reverend Jesse Lee Peterson, who has being as Ezekiel the prophet and the son of Pope St. Peter, the successor to Christ. St. Peter now being retired Lieutenant General John Harper, United States Air Force. Okay? That's the end of the article and my comments about the article. Thank you again for listening. It's T. Michelle Birdsong, daughter of the sun, Eve, mother of all living. I will return with more information as soon as I've uploaded this information. So long.